You think Christmas baking in the 1950s was all about sugar cookies and gingerbread houses? Think again. Mid-century American kitchens turned out cakes so elaborate and meaningful they made today's store-bought desserts look like afterthoughts. Let's dig into 30 forgotten Christmas cakes no one bakes anymore. Japanese fruitcake was once the crown jewel of Southern Christmas tables, a towering confection that had nothing to do with Japan, but everything to do with American ingenuity. The name likely came from the exotic spices that reminded bakers of faraway lands. Each layer was different, one spiced with cinnamon and cloves and studded with raisins, another plain white for contrast. The filling was legendary, a cooked mixture of fresh coconut, pecans, and citrus that took hours to prepare. Grandmothers started baking weeks before Christmas, knowing flavors needed time to meld. The coconut filling spread thick between layers created a cake that was moist, complex, and unforgettable. Families guarded their recipes fiercely, each one slightly different depending on which aunt passed it down. Children watched the assembly with wide eyes, knowing that slicing into this cake meant Christmas had truly arrived. Burnt sugar cake carried a bittersweet sophistication that set it apart from other holiday desserts on 1950s tables. The caramelized sugar syrup flavoring both cake and frosting required patience, as sugar had to be cooked until almost black before being carefully diluted with hot water. This gave the cake its distinctive amber color and deep, complex flavor-balancing sweetness with an almost smoky undertone. Home bakers prized their burnt sugar skills, knowing the difference between perfect caramel and ruin was mere seconds. The frosting was equally challenging, a cooked caramel icing beaten at exactly the right temperature for smooth consistency. Served on cut glass cake stands, burnt sugar cake announced serious baking credentials. The flavor was unlike anything, rich without being cloying, sophisticated without pretension. It represented careful, time-intensive baking that modern convenience has largely erased from kitchens. Lane cake originated in Alabama and reached peak popularity during the 1950s Christmas seasons when Southern hostesses competed to produce the most impressive version. The cake layers were simple white or yellow cake, but the filling was where ambition met tradition. Pecans, coconut, raisins, and maraschino cherries were folded into rich custard, then generously spiked with bourbon or brandy. Some recipes called for so much liquor the cake needed days to age, allowing the alcohol to mellow and permeate every layer. The frosting was fluffy, white-boiled icing providing contrast to the boozy, fruit-studded filling. Lane cake was not for children, and adults treated each slice as celebration. Baking one required confidence, as the custard could curdle if overcooked and boiled icing demanded precise timing. Those who mastered it earned reputations lasting decades. Their cakes requested year after year at family gatherings. Scripture cake was a beloved Christmas tradition that turned baking into a biblical treasure hunt, with each ingredient referenced by chapter and verse. Recipes listed items like Judges 5:25 for butter and Jeremiah 6:20 for sugar, requiring bakers to look up each passage in their family Bible. The result was typically a rich spice cake studded with figs, raisins, almonds, and honey, flavors evoking the ancient Holy Land. Sunday school classes and church groups baked scripture cakes together as holiday activities, combining religious education with kitchen skills. Mothers used the recipe to teach children both cooking techniques and biblical literacy in a single afternoon. The cakes were dense and aromatic, filled with warming spices of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves that filled kitchens with the smell of Christmas. Though the tradition has faded, scripture cake once represented how faith and food intertwined in American celebrations. Lady Baltimore cake was the grande dame of Southern Christmas baking. A towering white layer cake with filling so complex it required its own recipe card. The cake was delicate white, made with egg whites only, producing ethereal texture that melted on the tongue. The filling was the star, a boiled frosting mixed with chopped figs, raisins, pecans, and candied cherries, creating sweet and chewy contrast to the tender crumb. The entire cake was enrobed in more fluffy white frosting, creating pristine appearance belying the richness within. Named for the novel by Owen Wister, Lady Baltimore Cake became synonymous with gracious Southern entertaining and elegant holiday gatherings. Hostesses began preparations days in advance, knowing multiple components required careful timing. Cutting the first slice revealed the treasure hidden inside, and guests would gasp at generous filling studded with dried fruits and nuts. White fruitcake offered a refined alternative to the dense, dark fruitcakes dominating many holiday tables during the 1950s. Made without molasses or dark spices, this elegant version featured golden cake batter studded with candied pineapple, pale golden raisins, blanched almonds, and light-colored candied cherries. The result sparkled like winter snow when sliced, its jewel-toned fruits visible against pale crumb. Bakers soaked dried fruits in brandy for days before mixing, ensuring each piece was plump and flavorful. The batter required careful folding to distribute heavy fruits evenly without deflating the delicate crumb. White fruitcake was often baked in decorative tube pans, wrapped in cheesecloth soaked with spirits and aged for weeks. The aging transformed the cake, mellowing alcohol and deepening flavors. Sliced thin on crystal plates, white fruitcake brought elegance to celebrations. Hickory Nut Cake was a regional treasure showcasing wild nuts gathered from American forests each autumn. In areas where hickory trees grew abundantly, families spent fall weekends cracking notoriously hard shells to extract small, intensely flavored nut meats. The nuts had richer, more complex flavor than commercial walnuts or pecans, with slight bitterness perfect for baking. The cake was typically butter-rich pound cake or spice cake, with hickory nuts folded into batter and pressed onto frosting. Some recipes called for brown sugar or caramel frosting, complementing the nut's earthy sweetness. Gathering and cracking hickory nuts was communal activity, with families sharing labor and bounty. The cakes carried connection to land and seasons that store-bought ingredients could never replicate. Today, hickory nuts are rarely seen in markets, making this once common Christmas cake nearly impossible to recreate. Apple stack cake emerged from Appalachian kitchens as a communal Christmas tradition where neighbors each contributed a layer to build a towering holiday centerpiece. Unlike conventional layer cakes, this one used thin, cookie-like layers made from simple dough enriched with sorghum or molasses. Between each layer went thick spread of dried apple filling, cooked with spices until dark and sticky. The assembled cake was wrapped and left to rest for days, during which moisture from the filling softened dry layers into tenderness. The number of layers in a bride's apple stack cake once indicated her popularity, with more layers meaning more friends had contributed. Christmas versions might tower 8 or 10 layers high, testament to community bonds and shared tradition. The flavor was unlike any other, more reminiscent of spiced apple butter than traditional dessert. Each slice revealed striped layers, a visual record of many hands. Jam cake was a spice-filled wonder that transformed pantry staples into holiday splendor across Southern and Midwestern kitchens. Blackberry jam was the traditional choice, folded into batter rich with buttermilk, spices, and sometimes cocoa, creating moist cake with fruity sweetness throughout. The jam provided both flavor and moisture, making the cake tender and forgiving even for less experienced bakers. Caramel frosting was the classic accompaniment, its burnt sugar notes complementing the berry-laced crumb perfectly. Some families used whatever jam they had preserved from summer gardens, meaning each year's cake tasted different depending on harvest. The cake was dense enough to slice cleanly yet moist enough to melt in the mouth. Christmas baking often meant pulling out the last precious jars of summer preserves, transforming them into holiday splendor. Jam cake represented farmhouse tradition of wasting nothing. Sorghum cake drew its distinctive character from the thick, dark syrup that once sweetened tables across the rural South and Midwest. Before refined sugar became affordable, sorghum molasses was the sweetener of choice, produced by pressing juice from sorghum cane and cooking it down to syrupy thickness. The resulting cakes had deep, complex sweetness with notes of caramel, smoke, and something almost metallic that refined sugar could never provide. Spices like ginger, cinnamon, and cloves were essential partners, their warmth balancing sorghum's intensity. The batter was often made with buttermilk, which reacted with acidic sorghum to create tender crumb. Farm families treasured their sorghum sources, often trading with neighbors who operated small mills each autumn. Christmas cakes made with sorghum connected families to agricultural heritage. Though sorghum syrup can still be found, the cakes it sweetened have largely disappeared. Coconut cake reigned supreme as the most requested Christmas dessert across the American South, its snowy white layers and generous coating of fresh coconut making it look like winter itself. The cake required cracking and shredding fresh coconuts by hand, a task producing incomparably sweet, moist shreds, nothing like the dried packaged variety. 3 or 4 tender white layers were stacked with cooked 7-minute frosting that billowed like clouds, then covered completely with fresh coconut. The coconut had to be applied while frosting was still tacky, pressed gently into every surface until the cake resembled a snowball. Some bakers poked holes in layers and drizzled fresh coconut milk over them for extra moisture. The finished cake was displayed on the most elegant cake stand the household owned, often on a silver pedestal reserved only for Christmas. Children would sneak pinches of sweet coconut from the sides when adults were not looking. Today's coconut cakes rarely approach this level of devotion. Red velvet cake emerged as a Christmas showstopper during the 1950s, its dramatic crimson layers making it perfect for holiday tables. The original color came from the reaction between cocoa and acidic buttermilk, producing a subtle reddish hue that bakers enhanced with beet juice or red food coloring. The texture was unlike any other cake, tender, fine crumbed, and slightly tangy from the buttermilk and vinegar in the batter. Cream cheese frosting became the traditional accompaniment, its tang perfectly balancing the cake's subtle chocolate flavor. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel helped popularize the recipe, and soon home bakers everywhere were attempting their own versions. Slicing into a red velvet cake was always dramatic, the vivid red interior contrasting beautifully with white frosting. Mothers saved this cake for Christmas Day dinner, knowing its appearance alone would impress guests. The combination of chocolate, buttermilk, and cream cheese created something utterly distinctive that defined mid-century holiday elegance. Black walnut cake showcased one of America's most distinctive native nuts, with a flavor so intense it divided families into passionate admirers and determined avoiders. Black walnuts grew wild across the eastern United States, and gathering them each fall was a messy, labor-intensive process that stained hands for weeks. The nuts had a bold, almost wine-like flavor with hints of smoke and earth that English walnuts could never match. Bakers folded them generously into butter cake batter and pressed them into caramel or cream cheese frosting. The strong flavor meant a little went far, but true devotees packed their cakes with as many nuts as the batter could hold. Rural families who gathered their own black walnuts considered them precious, using them only for special occasions like Christmas. The cakes were dense and richly flavored, perfect for slicing thin and savoring slowly. Though black walnuts can still be found, the labor of gathering and shelling them has made this cake increasingly rare. Prune cake was once a beloved Christmas tradition that has fallen victim to unfair modern prejudices against this misunderstood dried fruit. The prunes were stewed until tender, then pureed and folded into a spiced batter that produced one of the moistest cakes imaginable. Cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, and cloves perfumed the cake with the warm scent of the holiday season. The prunes gave the cake a deep, complex sweetness that was richer than sugar alone could provide, along with a dense, satisfying texture. Buttermilk caramel frosting was the traditional pairing, its burnt sugar notes echoing the caramelized flavors of the dried fruit. Grandmothers who grew up during the Depression knew prunes as nutritious, affordable, and delicious, not something to be embarrassed about. The cakes kept beautifully for days, actually improving as the flavors melded together. Today's bakers might rebrand it as dried plum cake, but those who remember the original know no renaming could improve upon perfection. Spice cake with seafoam frosting was a Christmas tradition that combined warm spices with one of the most ethereal frostings ever created. The cake itself was a study in balance, with cinnamon, ginger, cloves, nutmeg, and allspice working together without any single flavor dominating. Brown sugar gave the batter a caramel undertone that deepened the spice flavors, while buttermilk kept everything tender and moist. The seafoam frosting was the true showstopper, made by cooking brown sugar, corn syrup, and water to the soft ball stage, then beating it into egg whites until it became impossibly light and glossy. The frosting looked like ocean foam or fresh fallen snow, with a texture that dissolved on the tongue. Making seafoam frosting required precise timing and a strong arm, as the beating could take 20 minutes by hand. The combination of dense, spicy cake and airy, sweet frosting created a contrast that made every bite interesting. Orange slice cake transformed the humble candy into a holiday confection that sparkled with color and sweetness. Orange slice candies were chopped and folded into a rich batter along with dates, pecans, and coconut, creating a cake studded with jewel-like pieces. The candy melted slightly during baking, leaving chewy pockets of citrus flavor throughout the dense crumb. Bakers made this cake weeks before Christmas, knowing it improved with age as the flavors melded and the texture mellowed. The cake was often baked in tube pans and glazed with a mixture of orange juice and powdered sugar that soaked in and added another layer of citrus brightness. Some recipes called for soaking the cake in bourbon or rum, transforming it into something approaching fruitcake territory. Sliced thin, the cake revealed its hidden treasures, the orange pieces glowing against the golden crumb. Orange slice cake represented the creative spirit of mid-century baking, turning candy into something sophisticated. Pound cake held a place of honor on Christmas sideboards across America, its buttery richness requiring no frosting or embellishment to impress. The traditional recipe called for a pound each of butter, sugar, eggs, and flour, creating a dense golden cake that sliced cleanly and kept for weeks. Christmas versions often incorporated brandy, bourbon, or rum that perfumed each slice with holiday spirit. Some bakers added citrus zest, nutmeg, or vanilla to personalize their recipes, but the best pound cakes let the pure flavor of butter and eggs shine through. The cakes were baked slowly in tube pans until they developed a crisp, caramelized crust that gave way to a tender, fine-grained interior. Hostesses served pound cake with coffee after Christmas dinner or alongside fruit and whipped cream for a simple but elegant dessert. The cake's long shelf life made it perfect for unexpected holiday visitors. Pound cake represented restraint and quality over showiness. Caramel cake stood as the ultimate test of a Southern baker's skill, its temperamental frosting separating accomplished cooks from ambitious beginners. The cake layers were straightforward butter cake, tender and golden, but the caramel frosting demanded complete attention and nerves of steel. Sugar, butter, and milk were cooked together until they reached the soft ball stage, then beaten furiously as the mixture cooled, transforming from liquid to spreadable frosting in minutes. The timing was everything. Beat too soon and the frosting would be runny. Wait too long and it would seize into a grainy mess. Successful caramel frosting was smooth, creamy, and deeply flavored with burnt sugar that tasted of sophistication and effort. Christmas gatherings always featured at least one caramel cake, its amber frosting glowing in the candlelight. Reputations were built on caramel frosting, and recipes were guarded like state secrets. Those who mastered it never revealed exactly when they started beating. Fig cake celebrated the sweet, honey-flavored fruit that grew abundantly across the southern United States during the 1950s. Home gardeners often had more figs than they could possibly eat fresh, so canning and preserving them became essential skills. Fig preserves were folded into spiced cake batter, creating a moist, dense cake with pockets of fruit throughout. The figs contributed natural sweetness along with a distinctive flavor that nothing else could replicate. Cream cheese frosting or simple powdered sugar glaze provided contrast to the rich, spiced crumb. Some bakers used dried figs that had been plumped in brandy, adding another layer of complexity to the flavor profile. Fig cake was often made from trees that had been in families for generations, connecting the dessert to place and heritage. The cakes were served at Christmas gatherings where guests compared whose fig tree produced the sweetest fruit. Today, fresh figs are expensive and scarce, making this once common cake a rare treasure. Eggnog Cake captured the essence of the beloved Christmas beverage in solid form, bringing holiday cheer to every slice. The batter incorporated actual eggnog, adding richness, nutmeg flavor, and a tender crumb that regular milk could never achieve. Some recipes called for bourbon or rum to echo traditional spiked eggnog, while others let the dairy and spice speak for themselves. The cake was typically a bundt or tube cake, golden and fragrant with the warm scent of nutmeg and vanilla. A glaze made from powdered sugar, eggnog, and sometimes a splash of spirits dripped down the fluted sides, pooling in the crevices and adding sweetness. The cake tasted like Christmas itself, all cream and spice and warmth. Bakers made it only during the brief window when commercial eggnog was available, though some ambitious cooks made their own from scratch. Eggnog cake was perfect for Christmas morning, served alongside coffee while presents were opened. It represented the season distilled into dessert form. Divinity Cake took its name from the heavenly candy that inspired its frosting, a confection so temperamental that Southern bakers joked it required divine intervention to succeed. The cake layers were typically white or yellow butter cake, simple and sturdy enough to support the elaborate frosting that made this dessert famous. Divinity frosting was made by cooking sugar syrup to precise temperature, then beating it into stiff egg whites until it transformed into billowy, cloud-like peaks. The frosting was impossibly light, yet held its shape, tasting of pure sweetness with a texture that dissolved on the tongue. Humidity was the enemy, and experienced bakers refused to attempt divinity on rainy days. The finished cake looked like it was topped with fresh snowdrifts, making it a natural choice for Christmas tables. Pecans were often pressed into the frosting, adding crunch and earthiness to the sweet topping. Making Divinity Cake successfully was a badge of honor among Southern bakers, proof of skill and patience. Lemon cheesecake was not the dense New York-style cheesecake modern diners know, but a delicate layer cake filled with homemade lemon curd that brightened winter holiday tables. The cake layers were tender white or yellow cake, light enough to let the filling shine. The lemon cheese filling was a cooked custard of eggs, sugar, butter, and fresh lemon juice that thickened into a glossy, intensely flavored curd. Making the filling required constant stirring over gentle heat to prevent curdling, a task that demanded patience and attention. The tartness of the lemon cut through the richness of holiday meals, providing a refreshing contrast to heavier desserts. 7-minute frosting or simple powdered sugar dusting typically topped the cake. Families in the South treasured their lemon cheese recipes, passing them down through generations. The cake was often made when winter citrus arrived in markets, a seasonal treat that announced the holidays had truly begun. Mahogany cake earned its name from the rich, dark color produced by combining chocolate and spices in a single batter. Unlike pure chocolate cakes, mahogany cake included warming spices like cinnamon, cloves, and sometimes coffee that gave it remarkable depth. The chocolate was typically cocoa powder rather than melted chocolate, creating a lighter texture that let the spices shine through. Brown sugar and molasses contributed to both the color and the distinctive flavor, adding caramel undertones that made each bite interesting. The cake was often frosted with chocolate or mocha buttercream, or sometimes a simple chocolate glaze that enhanced its glossy appearance. Mahogany cake represented the sophisticated side of 1950s holiday baking, a dessert for adults who appreciated nuance over simple sweetness. The combination of chocolate and spice was unusual enough to spark conversation at gatherings. Today, this cake has been largely forgotten, replaced by simpler chocolate recipes that lack its distinctive character. Date nut cake was a dense, moist confection that showcased two ingredients beloved by mid-century bakers for their natural sweetness and satisfying texture. Dates were chopped and often soaked in hot water or coffee to plump them before being folded into the batter along with generous amounts of walnuts or pecans. The resulting cake was more like a sweet bread than a traditional layer cake, dense enough to slice thin and substantial enough to satisfy without frosting. Some recipes called for a simple glaze or a cream cheese frosting, but many bakers left the cake plain, letting the concentrated sweetness of the dates speak for itself. The cake improved with age, the flavors melding and deepening over several days of storage. Date nut cake was perfect for Christmas because it could be made well in advance and kept beautifully. Hostesses served thin slices with coffee or tea. Knowing a little went a long way. The cake represented the practical elegance of mid-century entertaining. Chess cake transformed the beloved Southern pie into layer cake form, bringing that distinctive custard-like sweetness to a new format. The cake layers were dense and buttery, almost like pound cake, providing a sturdy base for the rich filling and frosting. The chess filling or frosting replicated the pie's signature flavor, made from butter, sugar, eggs, and a touch of cornmeal that gave it slight texture. Some recipes added vanilla, lemon juice, or even vinegar to balance the sweetness. The result was intensely sweet but not cloying, with a richness that satisfied even the most serious sweet tooth. Chess cake was particularly popular in Kentucky and Tennessee, where chess pie had long been a regional specialty. The cake version allowed hostesses to serve the beloved flavor at gatherings where pie would have been impractical. Making chess cake required understanding how to balance sweetness with just enough acid and salt to keep it interesting. Peppermint cake captured the essence of Christmas candy in cake form, its pink and white layers evoking candy canes and holiday cheer. The cake was typically white layer cake flavored with peppermint extract, sometimes tinted pale pink for visual appeal. Crushed peppermint candies were folded into the batter or pressed onto the frosting, providing both flavor and festive crunch. The frosting was usually white buttercream or 7-minute frosting, also flavored with peppermint and decorated with additional crushed candy. The combination of cool mint and sweet cake was refreshing after heavy holiday meals. Children especially loved peppermint cake, associating it with candy canes and Christmas morning excitement. The cake was visually striking, its pink and white layers revealed when sliced, making it a centerpiece dessert. Bakers had to work quickly when applying crushed candy, as humidity could make the pieces sticky. Peppermint cake represented the playful, joyful side of holiday baking. Ribbon cake was a showstopper that required patience and precision, its multiple colored layers creating a stunning striped effect when sliced. The base was typically a single white cake batter divided into portions, each tinted a different color and sometimes flavored to match. Pink layers might taste of strawberry, yellow of lemon, green of pistachio, or mint. Each thin layer was baked separately, cooled completely, then stacked with thin layers of frosting or jam between. The assembly required careful leveling and a steady hand to keep layers even and straight. When sliced, the cake revealed its hidden rainbow, a visual surprise that delighted guests and showcased the baker's skill. Ribbon cake was particularly popular for Christmas, with red and green layers alternating with white for a festive appearance. The effort required meant this cake was reserved for special occasions when the baker had time to devote to perfection. Each slice was edible art. Waldorf Cake was an elegant chocolate layer cake that carried the prestige of its famous New York hotel namesake. The cake featured rich chocolate layers frosted with a cooked chocolate frosting that was smoother and more refined than simple buttercream. Chopped pecans or walnuts were folded into the frosting or pressed onto the sides, adding texture and earthiness to the sophisticated chocolate. Some versions included a red velvet-style coloring, connecting it to that famous cake also associated with the Waldorf Astoria. The frosting required cooking sugar, milk, and chocolate together until thickened, then beating until spreadable, a technique that demanded attention and skill. Waldorf cake represented aspirational baking, a chance for home cooks to create something with big city sophistication. It graced Christmas tables in homes where elegance and tradition mattered equally. The cake's association with New York glamour made it feel special, even in humble kitchens far from Manhattan. Watergate Cake emerged in the early 1970s as a playful response to the political scandal, but its roots lay in the 1950s tradition of pistachio desserts that had delighted holiday tables for decades. The cake used pistachio pudding mix to create its distinctive pale green color and nutty flavor, folded into white cake batter with crushed pineapple for moisture. The frosting was typically a fluffy mixture of whipped topping and more pudding mix, light and mousse-like in texture. The color made it perfect for Christmas, its mint green suggesting holiday festivity without the intensity of food coloring. Chopped pistachios or pecans decorated the top, adding crunch and visual interest. The cake was remarkably easy to make compared to traditional scratch cakes, appealing to busy hostesses who wanted impressive results without extensive effort. While the name came later, the flavor combination represented mid-century ingenuity. Watergate Cake proved that convenience ingredients could create something genuinely delicious. Yule Log Cake brought European Christmas tradition to American tables, its rolled sponge cake decorated to resemble a rustic forest log. The base was a thin, flexible sponge cake baked in a sheet pan, then rolled while still warm around a filling of sweetened whipped cream or buttercream. The rolled cake was frosted with chocolate buttercream, then textured with fork tines to resemble bark. Meringue mushrooms, marzipan holly leaves, and dustings of powdered sugar snow completed the woodland scene. Making a Yule log required confidence, as the warm cake had to be rolled quickly before it cracked, then unrolled, filled, and rolled again. The decoration was an art form, with skilled bakers creating elaborate forest scenes complete with edible woodland creatures. Yule log represented the intersection of baking skill and artistic vision, a cake that was as much about presentation as flavor. It connected American families to ancient winter solstice traditions celebrating the return of light. Relish trays were the colorful appetizer platters that greeted guests before Christmas dinner, their compartments filled with pickles, olives, and crisp vegetables. Cut glass divided dishes held sweet gherkins, stuffed green olives, black olives, celery sticks, carrot curls, and radish roses carved by patient hands. The presentation was meant to impress, each vegetable cut precisely and arranged with care. Children were allowed to graze from relish trays while adults prepared the main meal, keeping small hands busy and appetites partially satisfied. Making radish roses and celery curls required technique, the vegetables soaked in ice water until they bloomed into decorative shapes. Some families added pickled beets, watermelon rind pickles, or homemade bread and butter pickles to their trays. The relish tray represented the era's attention to presentation and appetizer courses. It has largely vanished, replaced by simpler vegetable platters that lack the formality and artistry of the original. Boiled custard was Christmas drink that replaced expensive eggnog in mountain households. This wasn't thick custard, but pourable drink made from milk, eggs, and sugar cooked gently until it thickened slightly. Flavored with vanilla or nutmeg, it was served cold in glasses throughout Christmas Day. In rural communities, boiled custard represented accessible luxury, creating something special from everyday ingredients. The drink was sweet and creamy, coating the tongue with richness. Children loved it because it tasted like melted ice cream, while adults appreciated its elegance. Made in large batches, boiled custard lasted through Christmas week, becoming a daily reminder of celebration. This proved mountain families could create holiday traditions that felt luxurious despite costing almost nothing, transforming simple ingredients through technique and care into something genuinely special that rivaled any store-bought treat families might dream of. Pickled peaches were jeweled accompaniments that appeared beside Christmas hams, their spiced sweetness providing perfect counterpoint to rich meats. Canned peach halves were simmered in syrup infused with whole cloves, cinnamon sticks, and apple cider vinegar until they absorbed warm spices completely. The peaches emerged tender and glossy, their golden flesh tinged with amber from the spiced brine. Packed into jars, they could be preserved for months, ready to grace holiday tables whenever needed. Each peach half was studded with whole cloves, making them look almost decorative, edible ornaments for the dinner plate. The flavor was complex, simultaneously sweet, tart, and warmly spiced in ways that elevated simple sliced ham. Grandmothers often made these in late summer when fresh peaches were cheap, though canned versions worked nearly as well. Pickled peaches represented the tradition of putting up preserves, ensuring summer's sweetness could brighten even the darkest winter meals. Suet pudding was the heavy, warming dessert that sustained families through cold Christmas seasons, a steamed cake made with beef suet that provided richness no butter could match. The suet was grated fine and mixed with flour, breadcrumbs, sugar, dried fruits, and spices, then packed into molds and steamed for hours until dense and fragrant. The fat melted during cooking, creating pockets of moisture throughout the pudding that kept it tender for days. Unlike modern desserts that aimed for lightness, suet pudding was meant to stick to ribs and provide warmth during the coldest months. Families served it with hard sauce, custard, or simply a drizzle of cream. The tradition came from England, where suet puddings had fed working families for centuries. American cooks continued making them through the early 20th century before vegetable shortenings replaced animal fats in most kitchens. Those who remember suet pudding recall its unique texture and satisfying heaviness that no modern dessert replicates. Vinegar pie filled the dessert spot on Christmas tables when eggs were scarce and lemons impossibly expensive, its tangy sweetness fooling children who never suspected the humble ingredient list. The filling required only sugar, flour, butter, water, and a splash of vinegar that provided the tartness usually contributed by citrus. Cooked slowly until thickened, the mixture was poured into pastry shells and baked until set, emerging with a custardy texture that rivaled proper lemon pie. The vinegar's sharpness mellowed during baking, leaving only pleasant tang that balanced the sweetness. Mothers guarded the recipe's secret, knowing children would reject dessert made with vinegar if they knew. The pie cost mere pennies, yet delivered satisfaction equal to fancy bakery creations. Vinegar pie represented Depression-era ingenuity, proof that chemistry and creativity could overcome poverty's limitations. Families served it proudly, creating Christmas memories that had nothing to do with expensive ingredients. Baked Alaska was the show-stopping dessert that proved a cook's mastery, its dome of meringue concealing ice cream that somehow survived a hot oven. The construction was engineering. Sponge cake base, firmly frozen ice cream shaped into a dome, then completely covered in meringue that was quickly browned in an extremely hot oven. The meringue insulated the ice cream, allowing the outside to turn golden while the inside stayed frozen. Slicing revealed the dramatic layers: brown meringue, white ice cream, golden cake. The presentation caused gasps around Christmas tables. Making Baked Alaska required precise timing and temperature control, with no room for error. Families reserved it for the most special occasions, when impressing guests was paramount. The dessert represented the era's love of dramatic presentations and technical challenges. Baked Alaska has largely vanished from home kitchens, surviving in occasional restaurant appearances where few remember its former holiday glory. Tomato gravy over biscuits appeared on Christmas morning tables when meat was scarce, but tomatoes had been canned from summer gardens, the tangy red gravy providing flavor that plain biscuits couldn't offer alone. The gravy started with bacon drippings or butter, flour stirred in to make a roux, then home-canned tomatoes added with their liquid until the mixture thickened into something between sauce and gravy. Sugar balanced the tomatoes' acidity while salt and pepper rounded out the flavor. The gravy was ladled hot over fresh biscuits split open on plates, their fluffy interiors soaking up the tangy liquid. Children loved the bright flavor, and adults appreciated how the dish stretched pantry staples into something festive. Tomato gravy over biscuits represented the ingenuity of preserving summer's bounty for winter celebrations, turning canned goods into Christmas breakfast. The dish proved that holiday meals could be built from whatever the cellar held. Hard candy Christmas drops were the homemade sweets that filled glass jars and candy dishes throughout the holiday season, each piece a jewel of concentrated flavor and brilliant color. Making them required cooking sugar syrup to the hard crack stage, then adding flavoring oils and food coloring before pouring onto greased marble slabs. Working quickly was essential. The candy hardened fast and shapes had to be formed in minutes before it became unworkable. Cooks used special molds or simply dropped spoonfuls that flattened into irregular rounds. Peppermint, cinnamon, lemon, and clove were favorite flavors, each given a distinctive color so guests knew what they were choosing. The finished candies were stored between layers of waxed paper in tins, where they kept for weeks without losing their snap. Church bazaars and holiday exchanges featured these homemade drops, their handmade imperfections proving they came from someone's kitchen rather than a factory. Spiced crab apples were the garnish that elevated holiday platters from ordinary to elegant, their deep ruby color and clove-studded skins announcing celebration. Whole crab apples were simmered in sweetened vinegar syrup infused with cinnamon sticks, cloves, and allspice until they turned translucent and tender. The fruits were packed into jars with their spiced liquid and stored for weeks, improving as flavors concentrated. Come Christmas, they were arranged around roasts and hams like edible jewels, their glossy skins catching candlelight beautifully. The taste was intensely sweet-tart, with warming spice notes that complemented rich meats. Some families made their own from backyard trees, while others relied on store-bought versions. Children often avoided them, but adults treasured spiced crab apples as essential holiday tradition. The jars themselves became gifts, wrapped in ribbon for neighbors. Spiced crab apples represented the artistry of preservation, autumn's harvest transformed into winter's ornament. Cherry pineapple gelatin mold was one of the bright jewel-toned centerpieces found on mid-century Christmas tables, built from gelatin canned fruit and decorative molds. The mixture set into a scalloped ring that held cherries and pineapple pieces suspended like stained glass. It brought color to winter meals and added a sweet chilled side dish to balance heavier foods. This mold reflected a time when appearance was as important as flavor, and holiday tables were dressed in vivid colors. Eventually, gelatin salads faded from style, but this dish remains iconic within vintage Betty Crocker collections. It recalled an era when hospitality meant crafting something eye-catching even with inexpensive ingredients, and when molded salads were considered the height of festive creativity. The shimmer of fruit beneath the surface made every table look a little more cheerful. Divinity Candy was the measure of a good cook's patience. One wrong move, too much humidity, a second too long on the stove, and the delicate meringue would collapse into a sticky mess. But when done right, Divinity was heaven itself. Airy, white, and kissed with vanilla, sometimes folded with nuts or coconut for texture. It was a candy that felt alive under your fingers, cooling into soft clouds that melted on the tongue. Making it was a holiday ritual, requiring timing, precision, and quiet concentration. Mothers and daughters would whisper over the pot, testing the syrup's readiness with practiced eyes. When the mixture reached perfection, it was spooned onto wax paper in little peaks, each one a triumph. Divinity was not flashy, but it carried a quiet grace, a symbol of the care and love poured into every Christmas kitchen. Today, few dare to attempt it, but those who do understand that the name was no exaggeration. Eggnog Pie was the Christmas dessert that captured the season's signature drink in a slice, a creamy custard flavored with nutmeg, vanilla, and often a splash of bourbon or rum. The filling was essentially eggnog thickened with eggs and baked until just set, wobbling slightly when the pie emerged from the oven. The crust was typically simple pastry, though some cooks used graham cracker or ginger snap crusts for added spice. Fresh nutmeg grated over the top added both flavor and visual appeal. Families served eggnog pie chilled, often with whipped cream that melted slowly into the silky filling. The dessert was practical. It could be made days ahead and stored in the refrigerator, freeing oven space for Christmas Day cooking. For those who loved eggnog but wanted something to eat rather than drink, this pie delivered the same comforting flavors in a new form that satisfied holiday cravings. Duchess Potatoes transformed humble mashed potatoes into piped rosettes, worthy of any French restaurant, their golden peaks adding architectural drama to holiday platters. Potatoes were boiled, mashed with butter and egg yolks, then seasoned carefully before being loaded into pastry bags with star tips. The mixture was piped onto baking sheets in decorative swirls, then baked until peaks turned golden while centers stayed creamy. The technique required practice. The mixture needed the right consistency to pipe smoothly without being too soft to hold shape. Hostesses who mastered Duchess potatoes earned reputations as accomplished cooks. The presentation elevated what might otherwise be another bowl of mashed potatoes into something guests photographed before eating. Children were often assigned counting duties, ensuring each guest received their share. Duchess potatoes proved that technique could transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, requiring only skill rather than expensive ingredients. Ham bone soup became Christmas dinner when the bone itself was the only gift families could afford, the remnant of someone else's feast transformed into a meal for those with less. Churches and wealthier neighbors sometimes donated ham bones after their own celebrations, and grateful recipients knew exactly how to honor such gifts. The bone went into the largest pot with dried beans that had been soaking overnight, along with onions, carrots, and potatoes from the root cellar. Hours of simmering coaxed every bit of smoky flavor from the bone, while beans softened into creamy submission. The soup thickened as starches released, becoming more stew than broth by the time it reached the table. Families ladled generous portions into bowls, knowing this single bone would feed everyone for days. Ham bone soup represented community and generosity, the understanding that sharing meant everyone could celebrate. Potato soup with dumplings became Christmas dinner when the cellar held nothing but potatoes and flour. The humble ingredients transformed through cooking into something that felt like celebration. Potatoes were diced and simmered in water with onions and whatever seasonings the pantry held until they softened and began breaking down into the liquid. Meanwhile, dumplings were mixed from flour, salt, and water or milk, then dropped by spoonfuls into the simmering soup where they puffed and cooked through. The finished dish was thick and hearty, each bowl containing potato chunks, fluffy dumplings, and rich broth thickened by potato starch. A bit of butter or bacon fat added richness when available, transforming plain vegetables into comfort. Potato soup with dumplings represented the determination to make Christmas dinner from whatever was on hand, refusing to let poverty steal the holiday spirit from families who deserved celebration. Creamed spinach was the emerald green side dish that proved vegetables could be just as indulgent as any main course, its velvety texture and subtle flavor pleasing even spinach skeptics. Fresh spinach was washed thoroughly, wilted in butter, then combined with a rich bechamel sauce flavored with nutmeg and sometimes a touch of garlic. The finished dish was deep green and creamy, each bite smooth and satisfying. Steakhouses made creamed spinach famous, but home cooks recreated it for Christmas dinners when only the finest sides would do. The dish required fresh spinach. Frozen wouldn't achieve the same texture. And careful attention to the sauce. Families served it in small portions, understanding its richness. Creamed spinach represented the era's appreciation for technique over convenience, when vegetable dishes were crafted rather than simply steamed. It has largely disappeared from home cooking, surviving mainly in upscale restaurants. Beans and cornbread made Christmas dinner in homes where meat was unthinkable luxury, the combination providing complete protein that kept bodies strong through winter's coldest days. Dried beans, pintos, Great Northerns, or whatever variety was cheapest, soaked overnight before simmering all day with onion and salt. The cornbread baked in cast iron, its bottom crust crackling and golden from the preheated skillet. Together, beans and cornbread created a meal that was both filling and nutritious, the amino acids from each combining to provide what neither could alone. Families ladled beans into bowls and crumbled cornbread on top, the bread soaking up the bean liquor until it became almost like dumplings. The meal cost pennies but delivered satisfaction that expensive dishes couldn't match. Beans and cornbread represented survival, the understanding that celebration didn't require wealth, only the wisdom to use humble ingredients well. Creamed spinach was the elegant green that appeared at formal holiday tables, transforming a vegetable many children feared into something rich enough to tempt skeptics. Fresh or frozen spinach was cooked until tender, then folded into bechamel sauce enriched with cream and nutmeg. The result was silky and indulgent, spinach's slight bitterness mellowed by dairy richness. Served in small portions from silver bowls, creamed spinach added sophistication to tables that might otherwise feel rustic. Some versions incorporated cream cheese for body, while others kept the sauce light to let spinach shine. The dish required careful preparation. Overcooking turned spinach army green, but rewards justified the attention. Creamed spinach represented the era's appreciation for vegetables treated as worthy of the same care as meats and desserts, elevated beyond nutrition. Spiced apple snow was a dessert born from imagination and a few humble ingredients, long before electric mixers or instant puddings ever existed. It was made by beating stewed apples with sugar, spice, and whipped egg whites until it transformed into something light as air, a pale, cloud-like confection with a cinnamon glow. In colonial kitchens, it was considered both elegant and thrifty, a sweet reward after a year of careful preservation. By the 1800s, spiced apple snow graced Christmas tables as a symbol of simplicity done beautifully. It melted on the tongue, cool and fragrant, the kind of dessert that did not overwhelm but lingered softly. Children would watch in awe as apples turned into clouds under their mother's spoons, proof that magic could happen in a bowl. It may have vanished from modern cookbooks, but its spirit remains in every whipped cream topping and apple pie filling we still hold dear. Cherry Divinity Old-fashioned fruitcake loaf was one of Betty Crocker's most persistent holiday recommendations, a dense loaf packed with candied fruit nuts, spices, and warm winter aroma. It was mixed, slowly baked carefully, and cooled fully before slicing, sometimes wrapped and stored for days to deepen the flavor. For many families, it became a gifting tradition because the loaf traveled well and symbolized care and effort. The colors of red, green, and gold fruit pieces made each slice look festive, even if the flavor was richer than modern tastes prefer. Fruitcake slowly faded from popularity, but older generations remembered its place on Christmas tables and its importance in holiday sharing. In Betty Crocker's cookbooks, it stood as a symbol of patience, tradition, and the belief that some desserts were meant to last beyond a single day. Three-bean salad appeared at nearly every holiday gathering throughout the 1970s, its colorful layers making it as beautiful as it was economical. Green beans, yellow wax beans, and kidney beans were drained from cans and combined with sliced onions and bell peppers in large glass bowls. A marinade of oil, vinegar, sugar, and spices was poured over everything. Then the salad rested overnight while flavors melded. The result was tangy and crisp, each bean variety offering different texture and color. What made three-bean salad practical was its cost. Canned beans were inexpensive, and the salad stretched to feed crowds without straining budgets. It traveled well, too, making it a potluck favorite that arrived looking good. The dish required no heating and could sit at room temperature through long gatherings. Three-bean salad proved that simple preparations from pantry staples could earn places on festive tables alongside more elaborate offerings. Crackling cornbread emerged from cast-iron skillets at Christmas dinners, where wheat flour was too expensive and leftover pork scraps needed purpose. The cracklings, crispy bits of rendered pork fat and skin, were folded into cornmeal batter, adding richness and texture that transformed simple bread into something special. The batter was poured into a skillet greased with lard and preheated until smoking, creating a crust that shattered when cut. Inside, the cornbread stayed moist and tender, studded with salty, chewy cracklings that delivered bursts of pork flavor in every bite. The bread accompanied whatever else appeared on the table, soaking up gravies and pot liquors that might otherwise go to waste. Making crackling cornbread used every part of the hog, wasting nothing in kitchens where waste was unthinkable. Children fought over the corner pieces with the most crust. Crackling cornbread represented ingenuity, the transformation of scraps into something eagerly anticipated. Plum pudding with hard sauce was the English tradition that concluded Christmas dinner with theatrical flames and boozy richness. The pudding itself was made weeks in advance, a dense mixture of sweet, dried fruits, spices, and breadcrumbs that aged until the flavors melded into something complex and deeply satisfying. On Christmas Day, the pudding was steamed for hours, then turned onto a platter and doused with brandy that was set alight, the blue flames dancing across its dark surface while guests applauded. Hard sauce, butter creamed with powdered sugar and more brandy, melted over hot slices, adding richness to every bite. Finding the hidden coin or charm baked inside brought luck to the finder. Families with English roots maintained this tradition for generations, the pudding recipe handed down carefully. The labor required and changing tastes that favored lighter desserts eventually ended the tradition for most families. Plum pudding represented a Christmas that demanded effort and rewarded patience. Dandelion greens with fatback appeared on Christmas tables in communities where foraging supplemented what gardens and wages couldn't provide. The bitter greens balanced by smoky pork. Dandelions gathered in late fall or early winter were cleaned and simmered with fatback until tender, their bitterness mellowed by long cooking and rich pork fat that melted into the greens. The greens provided vitamins that stored vegetables had lost over months in the root cellar, and the fatback added calories and deep satisfaction. Some families added vinegar or hot sauce to brighten the flavor. Others let the simple combination of greens and pork speak for itself. Children often resisted the bitter flavor, but adults understood the nutrition the greens provided during winter months when fresh food was scarce. Dandelion greens with fatback represented the knowledge of wild foods that kept families healthy, the ability to find nourishment where others saw only weeds. Potato candy was one of those desserts that sounded like a mistake, but tasted like a miracle. Born in Appalachian kitchens, it began with a single mashed potato, a cheap, filling staple turned unexpectedly sweet. Cooks would mix the potato with powdered sugar until it formed a dough, roll it out flat, and spread a layer of peanut butter across the top before rolling it tight like a jelly log. The result was a swirled candy, soft and rich, that melted in your mouth with the flavor of simplicity itself. It was a Christmas favorite for families with little to spare, proof that even the humblest ingredient could become something special. Children would slice the rolls and sneak bites while they were still soft, unable to wait for them to firm up in the cool air. Potato candy was a sweet born of imagination and survival, a dessert that turned necessity into joy. It may not fit modern ideas of confectionery art, but in those lean years, it was as treasured as any box of chocolates. Pickled pig's feet were Christmas delicacy, transforming butchering scraps into something prized. When families butchered hogs in December, nothing was wasted, especially feet becoming treats after preparation. The feet were cleaned meticulously, boiled tender with bay leaves and peppercorns, then packed into stone crocks and covered with spiced vinegar heated with garlic and pepper. They cured for weeks, vinegar penetrating meat and softening cartilage until everything became tender and tangy. Served cold on Christmas morning, pickled feet were eaten with fingers, meat falling off bones while gelatinous texture melted on tongues. In rural communities throughout the South, these represented thrift elevated to tradition, using every part of hog and creating something delicious. Children learned to appreciate pickled feet as treats, not scraps. The vinegary tang cut through rich holiday meals. This proved mountain cooking was about transforming everything into something worth celebrating. Waldorf Salad was the crisp, creamy combination that brought elegance to Christmas tables, its apples, celery, and walnuts dressed in mayonnaise and served on lettuce cups. Created at New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel, the salad spread to home kitchens where it became synonymous with refined holiday dining. The apples were diced small, their tartness balanced by creamy mayonnaise and crunchy walnuts. Some cooks added grapes or raisins for extra sweetness, while others kept it simple. The salad was served on beds of iceberg lettuce, its pale colors looking sophisticated against the green. Making Waldorf salad required careful timing. The apples would brown if prepared too early, so it was often made just before serving. The dish represented the era's fascination with hotel cuisine, when recreating restaurant dishes at home was a mark of sophistication. Waldorf salad has largely vanished from Christmas tables, replaced by green salads that seem lighter and more modern. Boiled custard was the quiet forerunner to eggnog, a drinkable dessert that once marked the start of every Southern Christmas gathering. It was rich, silky, and just thick enough to coat the spoon, made from milk, sugar, and eggs whisked gently over low heat until the kitchen filled with the sweet scent of vanilla and cream. Families served it chilled in tall glasses, often dusted with nutmeg or topped with a dollop of whipped cream. Before eggnog's spiced boldness stole the spotlight, boiled custard was the holiday's truest comfort. Simple, pure, and patient. Children sipped it alongside cookies, while adults added a splash of whiskey or rum for warmth. It was a dessert to linger over, slow and soothing, like a lullaby in liquid form. There was no rush in making it. Curdled eggs meant you had hurried, and haste was the enemy of good cooking. Today, few take the time to stir a custard by hand, but those who do say the first spoonful still feels like Christmas morning in a glass. City chicken appeared on Christmas tables across working-class neighborhoods where actual poultry remained a distant dream, cubes of cheap pork threaded onto wooden skewers to mimic drumsticks. Butchers sold pork scraps for pennies, and clever cooks transformed these humble cuts into something festive by breading and frying the assembled skewers until golden. The name was pure aspiration. There was no chicken involved, just the wish for something fancier than what the budget allowed. Each skewer was rolled in flour, dipped in egg, then coated in breadcrumbs before frying in hot lard. The finished pieces looked almost elegant, their stick handles suggesting drumsticks that could be eaten with fingers. Mothers presented them proudly on Christmas platters, the illusion complete enough that children felt they were eating something special. City chicken cost a fraction of real poultry, yet delivered the same crispy-coated satisfaction. Which forgotten Christmas cake would you bring back to your holiday table? Share your memories in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe so you never miss another trip through America's delicious past.